But we begin this hour right here in New York City, where the acting attorney for the Southern District of New York has resigned. This is just days after she was ordered by the Department of Justice to drop corruption charges against New York City Mayor Eric Adams. Now, at this hour, those charges still stand. So I want to bring in CBS News Department of Justice correspondent Scott MacFarlane, who's following all the action and joins me from Washington to discuss. So Scott, what did she say, the prosecutor, in her resignation letter?
It was a blistering letter from Danielle Sassoon, who was, until yesterday, the acting top prosecutor in arguably the most powerful prosecutor's office in America, the Southern District of New York, Manhattan. Danielle Sassoon says the orders she received to dismiss the criminal case against New York Mayor Eric Adams, the corruption case, were breathtaking in the speed with which that order came and the manner in which that order came. The Department of Justice ordered her to drop the case, saying, among other things, Eric Adams needs to stay in office untethered to this criminal case so he can help President Trump execute his immigration enforcement strategy. That is norm-shattering, to put it charitably. The Department of Justice typically decides when to bring and drop cases based on the facts of the case and the law, not on political interests. She refused to do it. She resigned. Then the Department of Justice, Vlad, ordered two Washington-based officials to intervene and take on this case and take on this dismissal. They resigned. And more resignations are possible. This is a standoff between the new leaders of the Department of Justice, closely aligned to Donald Trump, and the career prosecutors who are trying to uphold, they say, the norms and rules of this powerful agency.
All right. So, Scott, let me ask you about the reaction from the acting attorney general, Emile Beauvais. What was his reaction to this?
He has said that there will be an investigation of Danielle Sassoon and her handling of this order and this matter. So the scrutiny is going to now fall on those who are handling Eric Adams' prosecution and this one-time, short-time federal prosecutor representing Manhattan. These offices will continue functioning. They'll find other acting people to run these positions until Trump can put in people he's chosen to be confirmed by the U.S. Senate. But the standoff's bigger than Eric Adams here, Vlad. This is such a break from precedent. It has the potential of sending a message to the nearly 100 other federal prosecutors nationwide, every state in America, that the norms have changed and that the agency leadership will keep a close eye on what cases you bring, potentially, whether they please or displease the president.
All right, Scott MacFarlane for us in Washington. Scott, thank you very much. I want to bring in CBS News contributor Rebecca Roiphe for more analysis on this. So, Rebecca, as a former prosecutor yourself, when you saw the acting attorney general ask the New York prosecutors to drop the charges of the mayor, corruption charges, what first went through what did you think, and what's your reaction to the resignation, the mass resignation of some of these career prosecutors?
Yeah, I mean, that was really an unprecedented order, specifically in that it did not appear to base any of its request on the facts of the case. In fact, it said to the contrary, that the Department of Justice, Emile Beauvais, had not endeavored to review the evidence in the case. And it was asking for this dismissal without prejudice. And that's another important factor. The charges could be brought again. And so in a way, it is holding that over the head of Eric Adams. If he does not do what will please President Trump, and at least this is implicit in the letter, then he will, could face indictment again, which is essentially a form of the Department of Justice extorting New York City through its mayor. So this is really unprecedented and quite alarming in its injection of political partisan considerations into what has normally been an office that is governed by law.
I don't want to let the mayor off. Sorry, Rebecca. What I was going to say is I don't want to let the mayor off the hook either, right? Because the point that you make, that these charges could be reinstated, anybody, I'm not a lawyer, but I just have common sense. I got to believe that if the Justice Department, the Trump Justice Department, says to Eric Adams, hey, we're going to get rid of these charges as long as you do what we need you to do under the guise of running for re-election, I know if I'm Mayor Eric Adams that there must be some kind of quid pro quo involved here. I could say, you know what, I'll take my chances with the legal system. By endorsing this, even if he says there's a statement out from the mayor's office that there was nothing was offered and nothing was exchanged, but if you know that these charges could come back, why would you do this?
Right, exactly. And as Danielle Sassoon points out in her letter, the comparison that Emile Beauvais gives is to this Russian prisoner swap. And of course, a prisoner swap between sovereign nations is quite different from something that ought to be governed by the laws and constitution of this nation. And the federal criminal laws must be implemented equally against all people, regardless of their positions of power. And this is what Danielle Sassoon felt was compromised by this order. And that's why, because she takes this oath, not only obviously to, follow orders within her office, but to support and discharge her duties under the laws and Constitution of the United States. If she's unable to do that, which she states that she's unable to do, then the only recourse is to resign.
Really quickly, Rebecca, before you go, does this at least give you some sense? I know that people are watching this and they're saying, wow, we're watching democracy unravel in the United States. But the fact that Ms. Sassoon, who clerked for Justice Antonin Scalia, she is a conservative, she is a Republican, she just didn't toe the party line when she saw she was being asked to do something that was wrong. Does that give you, is that heartening at all?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I think the norms of this office and the traditions within this office, not just the Southern District of New York, but federal prosecutors generally and different prosecutors' offices throughout the United States are extremely strong, and it will be hard to break them. And I think that the current Attorney General is probably looking at this and realizing, with all of these resignations, that it's going to be a difficult task to populate these offices with people who will be compliant in this particular way. And as Sassoon pointed out, there is also a judge that is going to review this. And as she said, she did not think this dismissal was in the interest of justice. To the contrary, it seemed to inject improper partisan considerations into what should be the impartial application of the rules, the rule and law in the United States. And so there are a lot of checks that are still remaining on the power of the president and his top officials.
All right, Rebecca Roiphe, thank you very much. Appreciate your analysis.
Thank you.